Hola, welcome. This is Dino Delano. All right, today what I want to do is I want to share with you some very simple techniques that we're going to work with, touch on right here on this video that you can use to help you to reestablish a connection to the earth, to the web of life in that sense. What happens to us is very simple in that sense, is that through our upbringing, through the indoctrinations that we get religiously, the indoctrination by government, oftentimes an indoctrination many times by parents, sometimes a very negative kind of indoctrination that we're worthless, we're not very worthwhile, we're stupid, and various things of that nature. What all of these things do to us is they begin to break that psychic connection that we have to the cosmos, to the earth itself. We lose, in that sense, that intuitive ability. We may be getting senses or feelings, and oftentimes we will disregard them because we are so hooked into, in that sense, objectivity. The belief in, we sort of worship the intellectual mind and objective ideas and so on. There's nothing wrong with the intellectual mind, so that's not what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is that we have way overplayed it. Let me give you just a quick story that I touched on in one of my other videos. During the tsunami, one of the small islands off the coast of Indonesia, the shaman there took all the people to the high level of the island, so when the tsunami came, no one was harmed, nobody got killed. Now, how did he do that? Very simply, because he was connected. He was able to sense, feel, see it coming, so he was able to respond. So this is what I mean by becoming connected again to that web of life. Children are enlightened till we talk them out of it. And indeed, they really are enlightened. In many instances, small children are still what? They're still connected. They still have feelings and a sense of reality that is very different from the adult. Because, again, most of them, at some point, particularly, at 3 years old, 4 years old, 2 years old, whatever, have not had all the indoctrination that it causes us to become more and more separate from the earth. Separate in the sense of feeling, separate in the sense of our connection. So what we are touching on here, again, as I said, some very simple techniques in order to bring that connection about. Let's start off with poetry. Poetry is one of the things that I started off with probably in, my late 20s, somewhere in there, because I felt a drastic disconnection. I felt like I was alone. I felt like I didn't belong. I felt like maybe I came from another planet or whatever the case may be. And sometimes you hear people say that. And I started reading some poetry, and one of the first people that I read, and I'll read this poem in just a moment, was by Ella Wheeler Wilcox. And it gave me a sense, because poetry for me, and by the way, poetry may not do it for you. It might be music, or it might be something that you read somewhere, but whatever. But if you use words in a way that gives you a sense of connection and feeling to life, it will help you again in that sense to reconnect. Let me read this. I care not who were vicious back of me. No shadow of their sins on me is shed. My will is greater than heredity. My will is greater than heredity. Many times we feel like we're stuck with our inheritance, our emotional inheritance. Not true. I am no worm to feed upon the dead. My face, my form, my gestures, and my voice may be reflections from a race that was. But this I know, and knowing it, rejoice. I am myself a part of the great cause. I am myself a part of the great cause. I am a spirit. Spirit would suffice. If rightly used to set a chained world free. I am not stronger, am I not stronger than a mortal vice that crawls the length of some ancestral tree? Very powerful poem. Powerful in so many ways that much of psychology gives us the sense that we are reliving our past. Not that there's not some truth in that. But when we begin to believe, when we begin to sense, when we begin to feel that we indeed can break the bonds of the past, no matter how difficult they have been, no matter how bad they have been, it can give us that sense of release and freedom. This next piece is from a piece which is called Invictus. And by the way, there was a film that was made that was a story about Nelson Mandela. And he used this poem while in prison. This is not the whole poem, by the way, just the last few lines. And oftentimes when I've been down and I'm walking maybe in the woods or I'm hiking or whatever, and something has gotten me to a point where I'm feeling like I'm not sure I can make it, or I'm not sure I can make this change, or I feel like, I'm weighted down and there's this heavy feeling, I'll repeat this to myself. And sometimes I say it aloud, particularly if I'm out there by myself. It matters not how straight the gate, or how charged with punishment the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. That little piece, for me, has oftentimes broken that bond of suppression, broken that bond of depression, broken those feelings of, I'm not sure that I can do this. I'm not sure that I can make it. See, we need that. Because there is so much negativity in this world that we live in. There is so much negativity on the television. There is so much negativity that comes about through the constant rap of propaganda that we hear on television and in the news. Personally, I haven't had a television for 10 years. And then I did have one for a period of time, and there's another 10-year period of time where I didn't have one. I'll never go back to having a TV. And I don't think TV is bad. That's not the point. But I do know that a constant process of being involved in CNN and the news media, which is 90-some% propaganda, mostly lies in a whole lot of different ways and twists and turns and so on, it does not help us to create or to have a connection with life. In fact, it does just the opposite, because a large portion of it is nothing more than an indoctrination of fear. Talk to the animals. I'm going to touch on some things here, and you're going to say, oh, this guy's a little fruitcake. Maybe I am. But, I tell you what, you see, children have that ability to be what? Silly. They haven't developed self-importance yet. So a lot of times we have to give up our self-importance in order to be able to get that feeling of connection. When I'm hiking, for instance, and I'm out there and I hear crows, and that's not unusual to be hiking and hear the crows talking. I talk back. I caw with them. And it always amazes me that sometimes if I caw 3 times, I get 3 times back. Or if I caw twice, I get twice back. What it does is it reaffirms for me that I am indeed connected. I'm not connected to just humans. I'm not connected to just my cell phone or to the internet. I'm also connected to the living species of life all around me. I remember way back in the 70s, during the years that I was teaching all over the world, and mostly a lot in California and Canada, and a lady by the name of Shakti Gwain, who came through my workshops and eventually wrote the blockbuster book that is sold in the millions, Creative Visualization. I remember her mother had gone and swam with wild dolphins, and I thought, wow, that's the cat's meow. But that thought and that feeling eventually led me to many experiences where I have done that myself now many times. And I'm not talking about captive dolphins. I'm talking about dolphins wild, and swimming with them and listening to them and have them literally relate to you. And indeed, they do. There is a film that you might want to pull up. You can get it on YouTube, and you can find it's called Ashes and Snow. Let me say that again, Ashes and Snow. Just put that into search on YouTube, and it will give you a phenomenal piece of photography. And it shows how this photographer, through film, through still photography, has caught this incredible collaboration between human and animal. All right, so again, when you play like that, when you allow yourself to play, to not be so serious, to be as a child, it will help you to reconnect. Speak to the trees. That was a wonderful book, by the way, The Secret Life of Plants. And one of the first researchers who did a lot of research on that, of course, was Cleve Baxter. And what he found was, in using a lie detector, is that plants have feelings, that when we had thoughts of shredding the plant, sure enough, there was a reaction there on the lie detector. But you might remember the stories of Finhorn, as example, where these people would talk to the plants, talk to the tomato, talk to the watermelon, talk to the squash. Did it work? Well, in the sense it worked amazingly, because squashes were 2 and 3 times bigger than average. Watermelons were 2 and 3 times bigger than average. Tomatoes were sometimes the size of small pumpkins, and so on it goes. So what they learned, of course, in the Finhorn community was that literally our feelings, literally our connection, and that ability to allow that connection, sure enough, creates an interconnection with life. It creates a collaboration. Sometimes when I'm walking in the woods again, I walk almost every day, by the way. I'll reach it and I'll touch a tree. And I give it that sense, to me, as I'm giving the tree recognition. I'm recognizing it for breathing carbon dioxide and giving me oxygen. Because you see, I realize that that tree is not just a tree. It's not something that is just standing there. I recognize that there is a give and take between it and I. I sense, I feel, I literally know that connection. So very simple things of this nature. Spending time in nature, by the way. You can get a little plant and bring it into your house and start talking to it. Get two the same. It's kind of a great experiment where you take 2 plants the same, talk to one, feed them both water as you should, give one a lot of attention, the other one just let it be. You'll notice that the one that you give lots of attention to, lots of feeling to, literally will usually, almost always, outgrow and outspark the other one. All right. Dreams. I consider this, if I were to have the top 10, this would be in my top 10 of methods to stay connected, methods to give me that feeling that I literally, not figuratively, am a part of life, is to know your dreams. I've recorded well over 5,000 of them in journals. And dreams are wonderful in this sense that oftentimes they show me my shortcomings. Oftentimes they show me my lies. Sometimes they show me those areas of, in other words, those areas where I'm being unconscious. Through that process, for so many years that I've used them, have helped me to become more awake. You see, literally in the sense of the development of awareness, Zen, as some people might call it, Zen mindfulness, it is a developed process. It is not going to happen just by itself. It isn't going to happen by you or I reading a book, right? If we read a book that has methods and techniques, now that's something different. Now maybe it'll give us something that we can use to literally broaden our scope of understanding to help us to gain a connection of awareness. Now, why is this important? It's very important because there are some major earth changes coming about. Let me touch on a few others here, and we'll get into that in just a moment. Meditation is an important one. Meditation is important for one reason, is that it brings us into a state of homeostasis. In homeostasis, the body has its greatest capacity to bring about healing, right? Because in that state where we are out of stress, where we are out of our heads in the sense of all the chatter and data and movement, the stuff going on, our bodies have a chance to replenish, to rebuild, and to heal. And also, as we quiet down the chatter and the internal mind, we can listen a little bit better to that place of silence, because out of the silence, so much comes. Body work, like yoga, tai chi, movement, dance, all of these things, they also help us to reconnect. They help us to feel a part of the web. Why? Because everything is in movement. Literally, life is a dance, isn't it? I mean, when you think about it, it's all moving. The ants are moving, the cockroaches are moving, the snakes are moving, the deer are moving. Everything is moving in this dance. But also, there's another important part about it, is that as you, as an individual, are creating emotional changes, changing structures within your beliefs, so on, it will help you to bring that about much more easily and much more effectively. Body work is a great one, like rolfing and massage and all of these things, all right? Spending time in nature. And I don't mean, a weekend every 6 or 7 or 8 weeks and you go out there and you spend a little bit. I'm talking about literally spending some time in nature. In other words, reaffirming, recreating, reconnecting. Literally, when you're out there, as I talk about, talking to the crows and talking to a tree. The lady, and I'll think of her name in just a moment, Saint Mother Teresa. One of the things I always remember that she said, and of course she was working with people in Calcutta, India, and some of the most ravaged places in the world of starvation, people starving. And she said, more than food, more than water, what people needed was recognition. It's a very important statement. Because you see, not only is it that people out there that are starving and in the slums need recognition, we need recognition. One of the major ways to get recognition is to what? Is to give it. When you give recognition to a tree, when you give recognition to a plant, literally in some way, you are giving it to yourself. Pay attention to your feelings. Don't just be a head, a talking head. That's what most politicians are, by the way. They're talking heads. They're talking about a lot of shit that most of them have not a clue what they're talking about. So pay attention to your feelings, that feeling body, that energetic body, that auric body that is literally connected to everything around you. There is a coming tide of change. And I don't mean 2012. The world is not going to end, by the way, in 2012. That's just a lot of people's fear and so on. But what has been prophesized in that sense of 212 is already happening. It's already in the process of going on. Let me give it to you in a very simple kind of way. If you are the earth and you are a conscious being, that you have a life and you have been poisoned, you have been stepped on, you have been beat up, you have been stripped of your forest and so on, what would you do? Would you, as a conscious being, would you begin to heal yourself? Naturally, yes, of course you would. Right? Well, literally, the earth is a conscious being. Literally, the earth is an intelligent, conscious being that is way more powerful than humans. Okay? We're not on the upper end of the scale. Right? We are not superior in any way, shape, fashion, or form to nature. We are a part of nature, yes. And we are better off in that sense when we align ourselves with it. Because in the next few years, when I say the next few years, and you're going to see it, you know, the tsunami, a lot of the hurricanes we've seen, a lot of the earthquakes that we've been seeing, this is just a beginning. It isn't that the earth is after anyone. It isn't that the earth is after humans or whatever. The earth is simply in a process of healing itself. And if we want to be a part of that healing, then we need, as individuals, to be connected. I'm not getting into a lot of specifics. I've seen a lot of things through dreams and so on. And the reason I'm not being specific about those kinds of things is that, you see, prophecy is changeable. None of it is fixed. It is more important for you and I as individuals to connect so that we can move with this change in the most holistic, healthy way possible. Go to CoolZenHealing.com and you can pick up my book, which is called Discover the Magic in You. And I go through a lot of what I've talked about right here today and so much more. These connections, methods, ways of letting go of a lot of the dysfunctional belief systems, a lot of the downloads that we have gotten that simply do not work in connection with life. All of these techniques and methods are within this book. Plus, I get into dreams, really heavy. All right, leave me a little note, would you? You know, if you liked this video or if you didn't like this video, right? So leave me a little reference. Thank you very much for being with me. Dino Delano.